areas of conflict, animals often have been left to their own devices to survive if they can. In Ukraine, we've seen people trying to take their domestic pets with them. Attempts are also being made to make some arrangements with some of the animals in the Kyiv Zoo. One organization that's transported animals from war zones is Four Paws. Their director is Fiona Miles. Fiona, good afternoon to you. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to actually transport animals, especially big animals, out of a war zone.
Correct, Stephen. Thank you so much for having us today. And yes, it is an absolute logistical undertaking. And firstly and foremostly, Four Paws does not work in active war zones. So where we come in is at the moment where the conflicts have died down and where there's now the necessity to come in and support those people and animals that are in most dire need. It's a huge logistical operation. One has to firstly assess the animal's condition. One has to, of course, have a look at what the possible solutions are for those animals, and of course engage with the people on the ground who've been taking care of them through some of the most difficult circumstances. And there are those amazing people that they do whatever they can to really look after the animals in those terribly difficult circumstances.
And the animals themselves, I mean, in some cases, they're literally in a cage while bombs are being dropped around them. I mean, they can't actually escape for themselves. They can't do anything for themselves.
Correct. And so from our experience, there have been people in those circumstances who've really put themselves out there, have made sure that animals can be taken care of, have made sure that animals are in a position to at least get some food and water. But of course, the traumatic experience for those animals, as you said, that are confined in those circumstances is absolutely terrible. And, the aftermath of a rescue is really in terms of looking after the animals for the rest of their lives. So that's where Four Paws has been able to step in after an active conflict has taken place, been able to negotiate with authorities, negotiate with owners, negotiate with people who've been on the ground looking after those animals to find a long-term sustainable solution for those animals and to bring them to a sanctuary, for example, like Lions Rock in South Africa, and give them a lifelong appropriate home. It means that we have to have a lot of foresight in terms of what type of management and program we're going to give those animals to take care of their individual needs, which we've been able to do. And there's been some beautiful examples of animals coming out of areas such as Gaza, where they've thrived in a sanctuary after such really bad turmoil.
It's also very difficult to move them. I mean, the bigger the animal, the more difficult it is to move. And I mean, we're talking about animals like maybe a lion, for example, a very big animal, an elephant, unbelievable, a rhinoceros, unbelievable. And then some animals, like a dolphin, you would have to move a water tank. That makes it almost impossible.
And quite rightly, and yet there are so many amazing people around the world who believe that it is possible, and I think that we should all believe that it is possible. These animals, just as we empathize, I think the entire world is in a sort of state of empathy at the moment in terms of what's going on. And as much as people are affected, so are the animals, and that's something that we need to plan and prepare for. And so there are extraordinary circumstances, there are extraordinary missions. It almost seems impossible, but I think when you think about it, the animals actually bring us together. They bridge these gaps, and it brings people together that we haven't seen in the past. I mean, many of the rescue missions that Four Paws has undertaken have actually brought people from diverse situations together for the animals. And I think that's really what the hope is. I think that's really what the opportunity is. And these animals are sentient beings. They are beings that can feel, and yet they cannot speak. And that's what our job is to provide them with the best possible outcome.
In a way, I mean, a lot of people say, well, why should humans worry about animals in a war zone? And I think there's a strong argument to make there. Animals, of course, are taken to the war zone and left there through no fault of their own. They had no choice in the matter and then sometimes left in a cage. It leads to a very interesting argument.
Absolutely, and I hear what you're saying. I think that in such dire times, it's logical. It speaks volumes. But our humanity towards each other is definitely in the way in which we treat animals in this world. And so, yes, we have allowed animals across the world in various circumstances, in various conditions, to be in captive environments, to be in environments where they have no choice, they have no say. And it's up to us to make sure that they have the opportunity to live a life that is dignified, to live a life that is most species appropriate. And in such circumstances, it's absolutely one can imagine that it's absolutely frightening for those animals. And so we do see, as Four Paws, animals that have come out of those war-torn areas where we've been able to go in, been able to intervene, that they do require special care, they do require special attention. There was one particular tiger I can think of that came out of a war-torn area where he came to our Lions Rock Big Cat Sanctuary in the Free State of South Africa, and it was summertime, and so some lightning storms and thunderstorms, and he was really, really afraid. And it made us realize that, of course, we had come from experiencing the bombs, and the surrounding circumstances really had affected him. And yeah, those are all the conditions and all the kind of things that one needs to take into consideration when you rescue an animal and when you put them in a lifelong care situation, is that you have to consider their background, you have to look at what the best program is for them for their future care, and to give them the opportunity to live a species-appropriate life.
Fiona Miles, thank you, Director of the organisation Four Paws. I do appreciate the time.